You're the older one. You should understand. My mother didn't raise her voice when she said it. She didn't need to. The sentence landed heavy enough on its own. We were sitting at the table where everything was decided. No arguing, no discussion. Just a conclusion they had already agreed on before I walked into the room. The house goes to your brother, my father added calmly. All of it. I looked from him to my mother, waiting for the rest. The explanation, the acknowledgement. Something. Instead, my brother smiled. Not a grateful smile, a relieved one. And the savings? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Also him, my mother said quickly, like she wanted to get it over with before I made things uncomfortable. You don't need it anyway. You're strong. You always land on your feet. There it was again. Strong. Understanding. The words they used whenever they needed me to disappear quietly. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't slam my hand on the table like people do in movies. I just stared at them and asked the one question that had been sitting in my throat since the moment I realized where this meeting was going. And what about the mortgage? The room shifted. My father cleared his throat. What about it? I paid it, I said. For years. My brother's smile faltered. My mother waved her hand dismissively. That was different. Different. That was her favorite word when facts became inconvenient. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or ask how paying the mortgage, keeping the house from foreclosure, and handling every piece of paperwork counted as different from ownership. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. Because quiet was what they were used to from me. Let me tell you who I am before this goes any further. My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've been the person holding my family's entire estate together while being treated like a temporary employee instead of a daughter. When my parents started struggling financially, I stepped in. When the bank sent warning letters, I answered the calls. When deadlines were missed, I covered them. When legal paperwork showed up with language they didn't understand, I translated every word. Not once did I hear thank you. What I heard was, you're good at this. And, you don't mind helping. And, your brother has his own life. My brother Daniel is 4 years younger than me. He's charming, confident, always busy. The kind of person everyone assumes will figure things out eventually, so no one ever asks him to. I was the opposite. Reliable. Available. The one who fixed problems before they turned into disasters. So when my parents called this inheritance meeting, I didn't expect praise. But I also didn't expect to be erased. We raised you to be independent, my mother continued, mistaking my silence for agreement. That's why this makes sense. Daniel needs the stability more than you do. I almost asked how someone who had never paid a single bill for the house needed it more than the person who had kept it standing. Almost. Instead, I nodded slowly. Inside my head, a different conversation was happening. One they had no idea about. I remembered the night the bank threatened foreclosure and my father couldn't sleep. The year my mother cried because she didn't understand the tax forms. The dozens of payments I made, just until things settle. Things had settled now, just not in my favor. My father slid a document across the table. We just need your signature here. It's a formality. A formality. That's what they called it when everything I'd done was reduced to a line on a page saying I had no claim. I picked up the pen and paused. They thought this meeting was the end of a process. They were wrong. It was the beginning. Because while they were busy handing everything to my brother and telling me to be understanding, they forgot one critical detail. I was the only reason there was still anything left to hand over. And I was about to stop pretending that didn't matter. Before anyone handed my brother the house, before anyone told me to be understanding, there were years where this place existed only because I refused to let it fall apart. It didn't start dramatically. It never does. It started with small things. A missed payment here. A letter from the bank there. My parents would call me, their voices tight with stress, asking if I could just look at something real quick. I was 26 when the first mortgage warning arrived. My father said it was a mistake. The bank always makes mistakes, he insisted. But when I logged into the account, I saw the truth immediately. 2 missed payments. Fees stacking. A polite threat dressed up as concern. "What do you want to do?" I asked. There was a pause. Then my mother sighed. "We'll figure it out." They didn't, so I did. I transferred the money that night. I told myself it was temporary, just until things stabilized. They never did. From that point on, I became the person everything flowed through. Bills came to me first because I was organized. Calls went to my phone because I understood these things. Documents landed on my kitchen table because I knew how to handle paperwork. No one ever said, "You're paying for this house." They said, "You're helping." Helping sounds voluntary. Helping sounds kind. Helping sounds like something you can stop doing without consequences. But this wasn't helping. This was maintenance, survival. Every month, I checked balances. I made sure the mortgage cleared. I paid property taxes when my parents forgot the deadline. I negotiated with the county when an old lien resurfaced that no one remembered existed. When I asked Daniel to come with me to the bank once, just once, he laughed. "You've got it handled," he said. "You're better at this stuff." Better. Another compliment that somehow turned into a responsibility. There were years where my parents' contribution barely covered utilities. There were months when they contributed nothing at all. When I brought it up, my mother would bristle. "We didn't ask you to do all that," she'd say. But they never told me to stop either. The unspoken rule was clear. If I fixed it, it was expected. If I didn't, I would be blamed for whatever fell apart. So I kept fixing things. I postponed vacations. I took extra work. I delayed plans I didn't even realize I was giving up yet. Every payment felt like buying time. Time for them to recover. Time for Daniel to step up. Time for something to change. Nothing changed. What did change was how they talked about the house. It stopped being our responsibility and started being Daniel's future. "He'll need somewhere stable someday," my father would say. "He's not like you," my mother added. "You can handle pressure." I wanted to ask why handling pressure meant absorbing everyone else's. I wanted to ask why stability was something my brother deserved, but I was expected to provide. Instead, I stayed quiet. There was one year when things got especially bad. My father was ill. My mother was overwhelmed. The bank sent a final notice. Not a warning. A deadline. I remember standing in my apartment, staring at the number on my screen, feeling my chest tighten as I authorized the transfer. That payment hurt. It wasn't just money. It was the moment I realized I was funding an asset that would never be mine. Still, when my parents thanked me, it was vague. "We don't know what we'd do without you. Not we couldn't do this without you. Just without you." As if I were a tool, useful, replaceable, silent. By the time the inheritance meeting happened, I had paid enough to qualify as an investor by any rational standard. But families don't run on logic, they run on roles. And mine had been decided long ago. I wasn't the child who needed security. I was the one who provided it. I wasn't the heir, I was the buffer. So when they sat across from me and told me to be understanding, it wasn't sudden. It was consistent. They hadn't forgotten what I'd done. They had simply never counted it as something that gave me a right to anything. And that realization settled in slowly, heavily, like a truth I could no longer ignore. Because if my years of payments, paperwork, and protection didn't count as ownership, then maybe I had been mistaken about what I owed them too. After the meeting, my parents acted like everything was settled. There were no follow-up conversations, no awkward check-ins, no recognition that something fundamental had shifted. To them, the decision had been fair, clean, and final. The fact that I hadn't argued only confirmed what they already believed about me, that I would absorb it. 2 days later, my mother called. Her tone was light, almost cheerful, like she was asking about groceries instead of the house I'd been paying for. Did you get home okay? She asked. Yes. Good. I just wanted to make sure you weren't upset about the meeting. There it was, the performance of concern. I'm not upset, I said carefully. She exhaled in relief. I knew you'd understand. I stared at my phone. That word again. Understanding. The permission slip they used to step over me without guilt. I have a question, I said, and I need you to answer it honestly. She hesitated. Okay. Why didn't my name ever come up? Silence. I continued, keeping my voice even. I paid the mortgage. I handled the legal paperwork. I kept the house from being taken. But in that room, it was like I didn't exist. Her response came quickly, rehearsed. That's not true. We appreciate everything you've done. That wasn't my question. Another pause. Longer this time. Emma, she said gently, the way people speak when they think you're being difficult. You did those things because you wanted to help, not because you expected something in return. Something in me tightened. So help doesn't count, I said. Only ownership does. She sighed. Why are you making this transactional? I almost laughed. Transactional. After years of monthly transfers and signed documents, now it was too cold to talk about numbers. You told me to be understanding, I said. I'm trying to understand what that actually means. It means not turning this into a conflict, she replied. Families don't keep score. But they do, just selectively. We hung up shortly after that. She sounded satisfied. Like she'd handled the situation. I sat alone in my apartment, replaying the conversation. Not just that call. All of them. Every time I'd been praised for stepping up. Every time my brother had been excused for stepping away. I started opening old folders on my laptop. Bank statements, emails, PDFs with dates and signatures. At first, it was muscle memory, the same way I always reviewed things to make sure nothing had been missed. Then something shifted. I stopped looking at them as tasks. I started looking at them as evidence. There it was. The first payment I'd made. The second. The year I'd covered the entire mortgage alone. The tax receipt with my name on it because I was the one who filed the extension. This wasn't invisible labor. It had simply been made invisible. That night, my brother texted me, "Thanks for being cool about everything." I stared at the message. The casual confidence. The assumption that I would continue being who I'd always been. No problem, I typed back. I didn't mean it the way he thought I did. For the first time, I asked myself a question I'd never allowed before. What would actually happen if I stopped? Not emotionally, not morally. Practically, what would happen to the house if I didn't transfer the money next month? What would happen if I wasn't the one responding to bank emails? What would happen if I stopped smoothing things over before they turned ugly? The answer was unsettling. Things would break. And the only reason they hadn't already was because I was quietly holding them together. That realization didn't make me angry. It made me careful. The next morning, I received an email from the bank. Routine reminder. Mortgage due in 7 days. Normally, I would have paid it immediately, just to get it off my mental list. This time, I didn't. I let the email sit unread. I went to work. I answered other messages. I lived my day like a person who didn't have a financial crisis attached to her name. Nothing exploded. No one called. The world didn't end. That was the moment I understood something crucial. Understanding to them meant continuing to carry weight without acknowledgement. It meant erasing myself so others could feel secure. And I was done proving that I could survive being invisible. I wasn't going to announce anything. I wasn't going to demand recognition. I was simply going to stop doing the thing they had decided didn't count. They thought the inheritance meeting had closed a chapter. They had no idea it had opened one. I didn't make a speech. I didn't send a dramatic message or call a family meeting. If I'd done that, they would have accused me of being emotional, of overreacting, of turning money into a weapon. So I did the opposite. I went silent. The first thing I did was nothing. When the mortgage due date passed, I didn't panic. I didn't scramble to move funds around. I didn't call the bank to ask for an extension like I'd done so many times before. I let the payment lapse. 3 days later, an automated reminder hit my inbox. Neutral language. Late fee pending. Please contact us. I read it once and closed the tab. Next, I logged into the account. Not to pay, but to check something I'd never checked before. Authorization. Access. My name sat there, listed as the primary contact. Not the owner, not the beneficiary. Just the person responsible for making sure nothing went wrong. I requested a change. I drafted a short, polite email to the bank. No accusations, no explanations. I stated that I was no longer authorized to manage or make payments on the property and requested removal as primary contact, effective immediately. They replied within a day. Understood. Please confirm in writing. I confirmed. That was it. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my brother. There was no confrontation for them to prepare against. I moved on to the paperwork. The estate documents listed me as the designated handler for legal correspondence. I'd been added years ago when my parents didn't have the bandwidth. I contacted the county office and asked how to withdraw. The clerk didn't question me. She didn't ask why. She simply explained the process. A form. A signature. Processing time. I filled it out that night. Piece by piece, I removed myself. What surprised me most wasn't how complicated it was. It was how easy. The systems didn't care about family roles or emotional obligations. They only cared about names on forms. And my name was everywhere. Within a week, I was no longer the contact for the bank, the county, or the insurance provider. I made sure every confirmation email was saved, labeled, filed. Still, no one noticed. My parents didn't call. My brother didn't text. Life continued exactly as it had before, because I'd always shielded them from the consequences of their decisions. The silence was almost eerie. Then the calls started. Not from my family, from numbers I didn't recognize. The bank tried calling me out of habit. I didn't answer. They left a voicemail. Polite. Professional. Asking for a return call regarding a past due account. I forwarded it to the email address now listed as the primary contact. My father's. I imagined him listening to it, confused. Maybe annoyed. Maybe assuming I'd handle it like always. I didn't. A few days later, a certified letter arrived at my parents' house. I knew because I got the delivery notification. Old settings I hadn't bothered to change yet. The notice wasn't catastrophic. Not yet. Just formal. Firm. The tone institutions use when patience begins to thin. Still, no one called me. I realized then how deeply they believed this was still my responsibility. How natural it felt to them that I would fix whatever was unfolding behind the scenes. I didn't. I focused on my own life, on work, on sleep, on the strange lightness that came from not carrying a weight I'd been trained to accept as permanent. Then my brother finally texted, "Hey, weird question. Did you change something with the bank?" I stared at the message. "Why?" I replied. There was a delay. Dad said he got a call about the mortgage. I could almost hear the confusion, the irritation, the assumption that I'd made a mistake, not a decision. I removed myself from the account. I wrote, "It's yours now." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "What do you mean yours?" I leaned back in my chair and felt something settle into place. "You inherited the house," I typed. I assumed that meant the responsibility too. The reply didn't come right away. That was when I knew. The shift had begun. They just hadn't felt it yet. The first real crack showed up a week later. My father called in the middle of a workday. I almost didn't answer. Old instinct told me to brace myself, to prepare to fix whatever problem was about to land in my lap. New instinct told me to listen instead. "Did you talk to the bank?" he asked without greeting. "No." A pause. Sharp. Disoriented. "They said the payment's late," he continued, "and that you're no longer listed." "Yes." Another pause. Heavier this time. "Well," he said slowly, "you need to call them and straighten this out." I closed my eyes. "That's not my role anymore," I replied. His tone hardened. Emma, don't do this. Do what? Refuse to silently absorb consequences that were never mine to begin with? I'm not doing anything, I said. I stepped away. You can't just step away, he snapped. This affects all of us. That word, us, the same one that had justified everything for years. It affects the owner, I corrected. Daniel. Silence. Then my mother's voice came on the line, already tense. Why are you acting like this? She demanded. We never said you weren't important. You didn't have to, I answered. Your actions did. She scoffed. This is about money now? It's always been about money, I said. You just didn't like it when I stopped paying it. The call ended badly. Not with screaming, but with frustration. Accusations. The familiar tone of people realizing a safety net has been pulled away and resenting the person who finally let go. 2 days later, my brother called. Not texted, called. I don't understand this stuff, he said immediately. The bank's asking questions. There's paperwork. Dad stressed. I waited. I need you to help me, he added. There it was. The expectation, intact. I can't, I said. What do you mean you can't? I mean I'm not responsible for it. He laughed, sharp and humorless. Come on, you've always handled it. That was before you owned it. So what, you're just abandoning it? He shot back. No, I replied. I'm respecting the inheritance. He didn't like that answer. The next notice arrived fast. This one wasn't a reminder. It was a warning. Late fees added. Deadline clearly stated. My parents panicked. My mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. No greeting, no small talk. You're letting this happen, she said. I crossed my arms. I'm letting the owner handle it. He doesn't know how. That's not my fault. She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. You're doing this to punish us. I shook my head. I'm doing this because you made a choice. She tried guilt next. After everything we've done for you? I didn't argue. I didn't list sacrifices. I didn't defend myself. I did everything I could, I said quietly. You decided it didn't count. That night, my phone buzzed non-stop. Calls from my father, texts from my brother, messages filled with urgency, irritation, and disbelief. The estate didn't collapse all at once. It sagged. Missed payment. Another fee. A notice from the county about unpaid taxes they didn't realize I'd been covering. Each problem was small on its own. Together, they were overwhelming. My brother tried to step in. He called the bank and got confused. He missed deadlines. He signed the wrong form. He assumed someone else would fix it. Someone always had before. Until now. The breaking point came when the bank sent a formal notice threatening foreclosure proceedings if the account wasn't brought current. That was when my parents called another meeting. Please, my mother said on the phone. We need to talk. I agreed. Not because I felt guilty, but because I knew something they didn't. I had kept records. And this time, I wasn't going to be understanding. They called it a family discussion. I walked in knowing it was an intervention. My parents were already seated. My brother stood by the window, phone in hand, pacing like stress was something new to him. No lawyer this time, no neutral ground, just the same people who had decided my role years ago, now panicking because it no longer fit. Sit, my father said, gesturing to the chair across from them. I did. We need you to fix this, my mother said immediately. The bank is serious now. I took a breath. Before we talk about fixing anything, I need to say something. She frowned. This isn't the time. It is, I said calmly. I placed a folder on the table. Thick, heavy, deliberate. What's that? My brother asked. My involvement, I replied. Since you all seem confused about it. I opened the folder and slid the first document forward. Bank statements, highlighted. These are the mortgage payments I made over 6 years, I said. Not once, not occasionally, consistently. My mother's mouth tightened. We know you helped. I slid another page forward. Property tax receipts, paid by me, because they were overdue. Another page. Correspondence with the county, legal filings, late fees avoided. The room went quiet. I didn't do this because I wanted to own the house, I continued. I did it because I didn't want it to be taken. My father shifted in his seat. No one asked you to do all that. You asked me every time there was a problem, I said. You just didn't call it asking. I turned to my brother. You inherited the house, I said. That means you inherited the responsibility. I stepped back because that's what inheritance means. He shook his head. You're twisting this. No, I replied. I'm clarifying it. I pulled out another sheet. This is the email confirming my removal as primary contact, I said. Everything is now in your name, legally, fully. My mother's voice rose. You blindsided us. I followed the structure you set, I answered. You gave him everything. I removed myself from everything. My brother slammed his phone down. So what? You're just going to let it get foreclosed? I met his eyes. That depends on you. You know I don't have that kind of money, he snapped. I nodded. Neither did I. I just made it work. My father rubbed his face. We thought you'd still help. Just quietly. There it was. The truth, finally said out loud. I did help, I said. For years. You just never intended for that help to change my place in this family. I slid the final document forward. A simple breakdown, totals, dates, amounts. This is what I've paid, I said. I'm not asking for it back. I'm asking you to stop pretending it didn't happen. My mother's eyes filled with tears. You're tearing this family apart. I shook my head. I'm exposing the part you were comfortable ignoring. No one spoke. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was stunned. Like a structure collapsing not from force, but from the removal of something it had been leaning on without realizing it. Finally, my brother spoke, quieter now. What do you want? I leaned back. I want you to handle what you were given, I said. And I want you to stop expecting me to clean up after decisions I didn't make. My father looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're really done, he said. Yes, I replied, with being erased. They didn't argue after that. They didn't apologize either. But something had shifted. For the first time, they understood that I wasn't threatening. I was finished. The foreclosure notice didn't arrive with drama. No shouting. No final warning screamed over the phone. Just a letter. Clean. Official. Unemotional. The kind of document that doesn't care about family dynamics or intentions. Only numbers and deadlines. They managed to stop it. Barely. My brother borrowed money. My parents drained what little savings they had left. The house stayed in the family, but it came out smaller somehow. Heavier. No longer a symbol of security, just a constant reminder of what it cost to keep pretending everything was fair. After that meeting, something changed. Not in the way people like to imagine. There were no tearful apologies, no sudden self-awareness. My parents didn't sit me down and admit they were wrong. My brother didn't thank me for the years I carried him without his knowledge. They just stopped calling. At first, it felt strange. My phone was quiet in a way it had never been. No emergency messages, no urgent questions, no late-night stress disguised as family concern. I realized then how much of my relationship with them had been transactional, even if they refused to name it that way. I wasn't missed. I was no longer needed. And that hurt more than I expected. But it also freed me. Without the constant pull of their problems, my life expanded in small, almost imperceptible ways. I slept better. I stopped checking my bank account with dread. I made plans without calculating how much I might need to redirect at the last minute. I had space. My parents tried once to reframe things. My mother called a few months later, her voice softer, cautious. We didn't mean for you to feel pushed aside. I listened. But you're doing well now, she added. And Daniel. Well, this was harder for him. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just said, I am doing well. That's true. It wasn't the acknowledgement I'd once wanted. But it was enough. I saw my brother at a family gathering months later. He looked tired, older. The house sat on his shoulders in a way it never had on mine, because he was carrying it openly now. You really meant it, he said quietly, not quite meeting my eyes. Yes, I replied. He nodded. I didn't realize how much you were doing. I let that sit between us. I know, I said. That was all. I didn't get the house. I didn't get the inheritance. I didn't even get an apology that matched the damage. What I got was clarity. I learned that being understanding had always meant absorbing loss so others wouldn't have to feel it. That being reliable made me invisible. That love, when paired with obligation, can quietly turn into exploitation if no one ever questions who pays. They gave everything to my brother and told me to be understanding. So I finally understood. I stopped paying for things that weren't mine. I stopped carrying weight that wasn't acknowledged. And I stopped confusing sacrifice with love. The estate survived. So did I. But only one of us learned what it actually cost.